Okay, so let's get started. What we're going to do today is talk about spiritual fatherhood as the heart of a Catholic vision of masculinity. And we're going to do this from the perspective of pastoral counseling, or from the perspective of pastoral counselors. So what are we dealing with today? I think that there's a pandemic. I don't think this is true, with 42% of kids growing up without a father in the home. That makes it a pandemic. And we mostly yawn. But the devastation on the psychological, the sociological, and the spiritual levels the evidence is massive and irrefutable. And I think fatherlessness is at the root of our culture of death. The effects are devastating. It increases divorce, increases out-of-wedlock births, and kids engage in sex at younger ages. There's poor performance in school. It increases the suicide risk and the rate. It increases addiction. And our whole gender confusion dilemma is directly related to fatherlessness as well. Homosexuality and abortions are part of the fatherlessness. So I'm not the only one who thinks that there's a crisis. Cardinal Ratzinger says that the crisis of fatherhood that we're experiencing today is a basic aspect of the crisis that threatens mankind as a whole. That's a pretty bold statement. He goes on and he says that when fathers are seen only as a biological accident with no claims on the children, or a tyrant to be thrown off, then we have this crisis that threatens mankind. But it's not really a new crisis. St. John Paul II says that original sin then attempts to abolish fatherhood. This is in Crossing the Threshold of Hope. So it goes back to original sin. And he also says that the future of the world and the church passes through the family. I would add, the future of the family passes through men and fathers. So good fathers create the conditions where mothers and children can flourish. So while it's not new, it can be said that the attack on fatherhood and the family has been perhaps the most intentional and sustained philosophical and political attack in history. So Karl Marx says abolition of the family, and he knew it was a radical idea, and this was back in 1848. Marx couldn't have dreamed of where we are today. You attack the family and you take out the father, so you need a substitute, and they have it. That's the state. It's to become the father. Mothers and children are the victims. The fathers are always the abusers, and of course, you need to pay for things, so you go after the fathers to pay for the fatherless families. So the political model has bruised the family pretty good, but has not led to its abolition. Don't worry, they have a strategy. So I think gay marriage has been used as a means to a socialist end. They don't really care about same-sex marriage or gays. They are a useful tool to serve as the death nail to the family. Why? Because same-sex marriage not only redefines marriage, but it redefines families. Legally, the birth certificates are going to read parent 1 and parent 2. But of course, the so-called gay marriage is not enough either. There's this gal, Miss Firestone. She was very influential, but kept in the closet. A very influential figure in the feminist movement. And she takes Marxism and feminism to a new level. Well, actually back to what Marx wanted. And her goal is that it must be the elimination of sex distinction and genital differences between human beings would no longer culturally matter. Her other goal is the tyranny of the biological family would be broken. So very much getting to what we are today. So the heart of a woman's oppression is her childbearing and child rearing roles. So she's not arguing against the patriarchy so much as the root of the cause of the oppression, and it's against biology itself. She's also looking for a technological womb, and we're getting closer and closer. We have in vitro conception. So you have to think about the internal conflict that produces such hatred internally for her. And she recently died last, I think, 5 years, and she was schizophrenic. But just in case you think this is extreme, it's only found in feminism, look at this. So this is the Supreme Court decision. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own conception of existence, of meaning, of the universe, and the mystery of life. Is that all? So if this was the average person, we would certainly wonder about their mental status, but this is in our law. The only thing they left out explicitly is gender. But the message is clear. I get to choose what I want to be, and it does logically and definitely lead to the gender confusion. So gender has been divorced from biology now, and it's become a matter of choice and whim. Most legislators thought that they were going to have 3 genders. So nobody planned on the gender explosion that's happened. Facebook touts somewhere between 51 and 71 distinct genders depending on the article. And don't worry, they're not done yet. There's going to be transracial and trans species. That's where we get tranimals. So gang violence is a problem all over the world. In this story, it's a gang of juvenile delinquents on a killing spree. Over 4 to 5 years, they racked up a total of 39 kills. They terrorized a South African wildlife preserve. The victims, they weren't the usual kind of victims. They belonged to an endangered species list. They were the white rhinos. The ruthless gang had killed about 1/10 of the herd in this park. Park rangers immediately ruled out the poachers because the rhino horns were still intact. So their next group of suspects was a group of juvenile delinquent elephants. The story starts about a couple decades before. The herds in the wildlife preserves were overpopulated, so they killed the adults and they took those who were under 10 to other preserves because they were easier to transport. When the kids got there, they scattered all over the park. Well, this is not typical behavior. They were A, grieving, and B, they didn't have any parents to collect them and bring them into a herd. So they brought in some moms, and they were able to work it out until they get to the teenage years, and that's when the males are routinely kicked out of the herd of their aunts and sisters, and they're raised by older males. Slight problem, there weren't any older males. So they went and formed gangs. Their testosterone spiked. They became sexually active as much as 10 years earlier than normal. They became very aggressive, and they became the neighborhood bullies. They harassed the rhinos. They threw sticks, stones, water, and even stalking them. So what would happen is they would flip the rhinos over and either step on them or run them through with their tusks. Park rangers didn't know exactly what to do, but they decided that Tom Thumb and Mafato and 3 others that they had extensive rap sheets on had to be executed. And they got Mafato, but this made the problem go away on the short term until the next crop of adolescents came of age. So they were fatherless, so they finally figured out and brought in a large bull elephant, a couple of them, to father them. There was a clash at the very beginning, which ended in one testosterone know-it-all adolescent taking a 3-foot ride in the air after challenging the big bull here. The testosterone level dropped within an hour. The dominance hierarchy was established. The teens grew up to be law-abiding citizens because they were mentored by their spiritual father. So I don't think the analogy is lost on anyone here. It's also a human story. And this is a picture from Baltimore, 2015, that was sparked by Freddie Gray's death in police custody. The focus of the story was on racism and inequality. The untold story was that there's fatherlessness in Baltimore. That's huge. 84% of 15 to 17-year-olds in Baltimore are from broken homes. Aggression is a problem for the fatherless. But there is another problem that comes up with men, and that's passivity. It's another problem of males. And you see here Obama's pajama boy wanting health insurance. So I suggest that there's 2 distortions of masculinity. There's brutality and passivity. Cain was very brutal, and Adam was passive in the garden with the threat from the serpent. There are also 2 tasks, sexuality and aggression. These tasks are tasks that societies and families must accomplish to exist and to survive. It must facilitate self-control in these areas. So, by the way, roughhousing is really crucial with the fathers, who plays a huge role in the area of socialization of aggression. So the kids can learn out where the line is between play and aggression, and learn about rules, which we would call ethics and morals. So the church, I think, needs to lead the way here. And what I'm doing is proposing this Catholic vision of masculinity. So we need to address the problem of fatherlessness, and that is this Catholic vision of masculinity, where I would suggest all men are called to live a heroic life. And from the wisdom of the church, I will lay out 4 components of the Catholic vision of masculinity. It's not new, but it is the way it's brought together, I think it's more comprehensive than anyone else I've seen. So at the heart of a Catholic vision of masculinity is the call to live out spiritual fatherhood and to radiate God's fatherhood to everyone. A Catholic vision of masculinity must address the 2 distortions and the 2 tasks. A Catholic vision of masculinity must address all men, not just married men or fathers or celibate fathers or who wear white collars. A Catholic vision of masculinity must support marriage and the family, the cell of society, whether married or not, whether you have children or not. And a Catholic vision of masculinity must address the growing gender confusion. If we can awaken the sleeping giant of men within the sleeping giant of the Catholic Church, I think this will make an essential contribution to the unveiling of the civilization of love that Jesus started. If we fail, the culture of death is going to prevail. So we're going to talk about the 4 components. On being family is the first one. Spiritual fatherhood as the summit and the heart of the Catholic vision of masculinity. We're going to talk about the fundamentals. This is more about the theological anthropology. And then we're going to talk about the integrated or wise man. So that's the introduction. It's the overview. We got the 2 tasks and 2 distortions. Marxism being a problem, and we have quotes from John Paul and Cardinal Ratzinger. So let me know what you think. You can post below the video here, comments. Be very interested in what you hear.